In this video, I'll be showing you how firewall works. Now, let's say a user or users, when they type, say, google.com, when you type google.com, this could be google.com or amazon.com. That's a DNS name. That's a domain name. Now, all these things you are doing, there are some things that is happening at the end, at the back end. For you to have access to any resource, the resource must have an IP address. Now, imagine for each resource that have its own IP address, you have to memorize all the IP address, because Google has its own IP address, its own public IP address that you can use to access google.com. Amazon have its own IP address. Alibaba have its own IP address. All websites have its own IP address. Facebook.com have its own IP address. Now, imagine you have to memorize all the IP address. It's like you have a phone, you have different phone numbers. Instead of you just dialing like searching for your friend's name that you want to call, you have to always type the person's phone number. Imagine, so now your friends, your father, your mother, your siblings, everybody, you have to know their phone number off, and because you have to type it, that's exactly how it will be. But because of DNS, you don't need to do that. You just have to type the name of whatever you want to have access to. And what happens at the back end? This is what happens at the back end. When you type, let's say google.com, that's why I wrote xyc.com. So the DNS will resolve to the IP that the particular website you want to have access to is using. So now, in most cases, load balancer can be used, firewall can be used. In fact, in most cases, both will be used, firewall and load balancer. However, this video is not on load balancer, it's on firewall. So now, what we are doing here is basically our user types xyc.com, which is the DNS, and the DNS resolved to firewall IP. So the DNS resolve it and be like, oh, this is the IP, and the IP is actually firewall. So now the firewall we now filter the traffic that is coming, because all these things that these people are typing, these are users, their traffic, internet traffic. So the firewall is going to filter the traffic based on the policies and rules we've given to the firewall. So now, and these users, they are trying to have access to a particular resource. They are trying to have access. When you type google.com, you are trying to have access to resources that Google have created. And in this case, we only have just one server, which is a virtual machine. And this virtual machine is going to be a private virtual machine. It's going to be a private virtual machine, and obviously we'll have created our virtual machine. So I just put admin here. Admin will have SSH. When you create a virtual machine, you have to use Bastion nodes to SSH into the virtual machine, because the virtual machine does not have IP address, so you can't just SSH to it. Since it's a private virtual machine, you have to use Bastion. So for the virtual machine to be able to have access to the internet, what I mean by access to the internet, so for you to be able to install, let's say you want to install your web server, maybe Nginx or Apache or Docker, whatever you want to install on this private VM, you need Bastion. And I mean, to SSH into the VM, you need Bastion, and for the virtual machine to have access to the internet to install all the necessary things you need NAT Gateway. These are the things we are going to do in this video. We are going to create all these things one at a time, and we are going to give port 80. We are going to allow port 80 or in our NSG. Now we are going to create different subnets. We are going to create subnets for firewall. We are going to create subnets for Bastion, which will be like our private subnets. Then when we create our firewall policy and put all these things in place, we'll be able to send traffic to this virtual machine and see and have access to it, and our virtual machine will be able to give us feedback. So that's what this demo is going to be about. So we are using Azure as our public cloud. So I would not be taking one step at a time, like creating resource group, then creating VNet, then creating subnets. I want us to have some speed. So I'll come to virtual network. As I'm creating the virtual network, I'll be creating the resource group as well. So when I click on create, I just search for virtual network and I want to create virtual network. All right, now since our virtual network has loaded, the first thing we want to do now is to create our resource group. So in this case, I'll just say FW, which is firewall VNet. I'll click on OK. Oh, that's resource group. My bad. Let me change that. Firewall RG, which means resource group. I'll click on OK. Then our virtual network name, which will be, I'll say FW VNet. I will leave it in there. Let me change it to, let me say Central US. Oops, nope. Central US. So I'll click on next. Now this is where I'm going to select a couple of things. Now remember, we want to use our Bastion, so I'm going to select this so that we can have our Bastion nodes. Now Bastion nodes name, it has given us a name. I can edit it, but I will leave it as it is. Azure Bastion public IP, so I will leave it as it is standard. I'll click on OK. Then firewall, I'm going to toggle this on. Now Azure Firewall name, it has given us a name which you can edit, but I will leave it as it is. Say I'm going with basic. Then policy none. So an Azure Firewall with basic SQL requires a firewall policy. An Azure Firewall with basic requires a, so I'll click on create. So this is just to create firewall policy. I'll click on OK. We are going to create the policy later as we move. Azure Firewall public IP, yes, because we want it to have a public IP. That's because it is through this firewall public IP we have access to our private VM. So DDoS, no, we are not doing that. We leave it as it is. Then I will click on next. Now, if you look at this, Azure Bastion subnet has been created for us. Azure Firewall subnet has been created for us. This Azure Firewall management is just Azure thing. So I selected. Let me go back. If I was to select standard here, this will not show, but it's because it's basic, that's why this is showing. All right, our subnets, main subnets, it's called default. I can come here and just remain the subnet. I will rename the subnet, It's just to name it. I don't want it to be default, so I can say firewall subnet. I just give it a random name. So another thing I want to do is to create my NAT gateway, because without NAT gateway I won't be able to update the VM or install necessary applications I need on the VM. So I would come to create new NAT gateway. I will just say FW NAT. So for the NAT gateway, obviously it will have a public IP. So I will say FW NAT IP. So I'll click on OK. So OK. So I've just like that, I've created my NAT gateway. So I will click on save. Now we have our NAT gateway. So I'll click on next. Then I'll just click on review and create. At this point, Azure is going to create a lot of things. Azure is going to create resource group, it's going to create VNet, it's going to create subnet, different kinds of subnets. It's going to create subnets for Bastion nodes, it's going to create subnets for firewall, it's going to create subnets that will host our virtual machine. Then it's going to create NAT gateway. So a lot of things Azure is going to create for us, and obviously this will take a couple of time. I will pause this video, then come back when everything is ready. Alright, so that has been deployed. Let's click on go to resource. Now, can you see subnets? We have 4 subnets that has been created for us. Now, mind you, this is not a DNS class, like I said. It's just to explain how things work. So what has Azure done for us? Azure has created firewall for us, subnets, NSG, Bastion, and NAT gateway. These are the things Azure has created for us. What we need right now is our private VM, and we are going to use Bastion to access it into the private VM. So this is taking long, but this is the subnet. The subnet is going to come up. So as this is loading, let's sharply create our virtual machine. So I'll come here, type virtual machine. So click on create virtual machines. Now I'm going to select my FWRG, which is resource group, firewall resource group. My virtual machine name, I will just say firewall VM. Yeah, I will leave it as Central US Zone 1, Ubuntu. Then yes, this is okay by me. I can go smaller, but I will just stick with this. Then I want to SSH, so I will just say let's leave it as Azure user. This is the key. Now, because this is a private VM, obviously our public command port will be none. So I'll click on next. I'll ignore this. I'll just leave this as it is. If I want to go bigger, I can just, but I'll just stick with this. I can attach a data disk, but we are not doing that. So I'll click on networking, where I'm going to select my VNet and subnet. So my VNet, yes, firewall VNet, and my subnet will be firewall subnet. there won't be any kind of public IP to be known. Public inbound ports, we are going to open port 80 later. That's exactly what we did here. Allow port 80. So if anything, if the traffic is allowed, that's when there will be access to the VM. So I'm supposed to open port 80 here, but it's something we can do later, so I will leave it as it is. I will select this. I will scroll down from here. I can just review and create. So I'll click on create. I will download my key pair. Here is it, my key pair has been downloaded, so I'll click on return to create a VM. I'll pause this video and come back when the VM has been created. So our VM has been created. I'll click on go to resource. As you can see, private link, there is no public IP. So how do we SSH into this VM? That is where Bastion host comes in. So I'll click on, look to your left, click on Bastion. So I want to SSH. So and my key pair is sitting on my local laptop. So I'll click on local file. I will select the location. I'll pick this, then I'll click on open. Then username is Azure VM. No, Azure user. Azure user. Then I'll click on connect. Allow. And I'm inside my virtual machine. So if I do sudo apt update, if there was no NAT gateway, our VM won't be able to update. So it's because of the NAT gateway, that's why our VM is getting updated. Now what do? We want to create our firewall policy. So how do we do that? You come here, we type firewall. Now here is our firewall. Now at this place we have Azure Firewall policies, which we are going to click on that in a moment. But however, this is our firewall that was created for us when I selected that while creating our VNet. So if I click on this public firewall, you see that our firewall has a public IP, and this is the IP we are going to use to access whatever is on our VM. So let me copy that, open a new slide and paste the IP. You see that it's just running, nothing is, we are not getting any feedback. So let me go back to the firewall so that we can create the policies. So I'll click on Azure Firewall policies. Now we have rules collection and DNAT rules. These are the two most important things we need in this demo. So I'll click on rules collections. As you can see, there's nothing here, so we click on add rule collection. So I'll give it a name. I will say we've been using firewall, so I will say firewall collection. So rule collection type is going to be DNAT, because it's going to be DNAT rule. So I'll put this, let's say 100. The lower it is, the higher the priority. So destination network address DNAT. So that's the full meaning of DNAT, destination network address translation. So rule collection group, we leave it at default DNAT root collection group. Then I'm not going to do this yet. I'm going to click on add. Now it's adding root collection, updating root collection group. So that will take like a few seconds. Let me pause this video. While our root collection is loading, let's go to our VM. As you can see, it has been updated. Let me clear the VM. Then I can do sudo so that I can be the root user. If I press enter now, I'll be the root user. But let's just most of the time we'll be seeing sudo. Let me just stick to that to make things easier for you. So sudo, I want to install, let's use Apache 2. Sudo apt install Apache 2. You can use nginx. Install Apache. Supposed to put -y. Now we have a web server on our virtual machine. Is our rule ready? It's still loading. All right, we have our Apache web server running on our VM. This is still loading. So let's restart our Apache. Sudo systemctl restart Apache 2. Wow. And let's check the status of our Apache. Sudo systemctl status Apache. As you can see, it's active and running. All right, our root collection has been created. So the next thing we want to do is to click on DNAT rules. So I'm going to click on add rule. Now root collection type, we created default DNAT rule here, which was the one we created here. Root collection, firewall collection that we created the other time. These I will just give it a name, which is firewall rule. Now yes, the source type is going to be IP. Source IP, this is where you can do all your description. I can come here to look for my IP address, and if I only want my IP address to have access to this, so you can put your IP address here to limit the amount of people that will have access to whatever you want to have access to. However, in this situation, I'll just leave it as star, which is asterisk. Asterisk means any kind of IP. Now, destination IP. Let me scroll down. Destination IP means your firewall IP. Let me open new slide of Azure. Destination IP means your firewall IP. So I'll go to firewall. Remember, like I said, our firewall has its own public IP. So it's the public IP from the firewall that we are going to copy and paste into the destination IP. So where is it? Destination IP. Oops. I thought I copied this just now. Okay, so protocol is going to be TCP, destination port to be port 80, which is HTTP. Scroll down, translation type is going to be IP. So translation address is going to be our virtual machine private IP. Our virtual machine private IP. Yes, our server, which our virtual machine, our server does not have a public IP, but it has a private IP. Here, can you see private IP address? So that what we are going to copy that to come here and put it in translated address. So it will be port 80. Then I will click on save. Now this is it's adding the rule. As this is loading, let's go back to our Bastion, which is our virtual machine. Let me clear this up. We want to put something simple on our virtual machine. We have Apache running. We can just leave it at that, but we can just remove the what's it called? We can remove the Apache, because what we see is just the Apache, the default page of Apache. So I can do sudo vim dash var, slash var slash www slash html slash index dot html. Now we have our HTML file, and I want to delete all these things, which is, as you can see, Apache 2 blah blah blah. So I'll do escape key column, then I'll do %d, that is to delete everything. All this has been deleted. I just want to paste something simple and easy. Let me see, this is still loading. This is still loading. That's one of the reasons this is not giving any feedback. So for now, let me just close this. Let me just close it. We'll come back to it. This is still loading. Where is it? This is still loading. Our rule is still loading. All right. So back to our virtual machine. We've deleted everything. I will press I so that I can type, and I'll just put something very simple and basic, which is I learned Azure Firewall today. Just this is just a simple HTML line. So after that, I will click on my escape key, then column. I will now press WQ, then I press enter. So I've written what's on our on our virtual machine. So what I will do, here what I'm just doing is just clicking on the we have forward, backward, top and down key. I'm just clicking on the up key just to go for sudo system restart Apache 2. Let's see, is this ready? All right, it's ready now. So let me copy this IP address, Control C. Let's see if we are going to get feedback. Can you see I learned Azure Firewall today? So everything that's here, though we didn't do DNS, what you just see right now here, let me just refresh. What just happened here right now it's what you are seeing here. So our VM does not have any public IP that we can see. What this public IP we are seeing here is one from firewall, and for us to be able to do all these things, as you can see, this is our Bastion. We could not do this just from normal port 20. In fact, mind you, port 80, even port 80, we didn't allow port 80. So now we didn't allow for port 80 from NSG, but firewall has done everything for us. So we have access to our VM, and our VM is responding effectively. Even I can change this. Let's change it. I learned Azure Firewall today, and I'll click on I to edit, and and um, I'm so I'm so happy. I learned Azure Firewall today, and I'm so happy. So now click on escape key, then colon WQ, press enter. Let's restart our Apache sudo systemctl restart Apache 2. Then come here, let's refresh this. Can you see I learned Azure Firewall today, and I'm so happy? As simple as ABC. And don't forget, because we spinned up a lot of resources and it's going to be expensive, always don't forget to tear down. How do you tear down easily and everything? You tear down everything. You come, you search for resource group. This is the resource group created, firewall RG. Then delete resource group. So when I delete resource group, everything here that has been spinned up, everything here, see, a lot of things was spinned up, and this is morning. So don't forget to always tear down. So I will just click on this to copy, then I will paste, then I'll click on delete, and that is going to tear down everything we've created. All right, what you just learned now is how firewall works, how to create policy for firewalls, and how firewall filter traffic and send it to our private VM, and we get a feedback from our private VM. This makes our VM to be secure from external attack, and it makes having access to our VM basically impossible, because the VM is not exposed to the internet. It's only firewall that is being exposed to the internet. So even if attacker wants to come, it's not going to get to our virtual machine. This is what most big companies do. No standard big company exposes their server to the public internet. So you are welcome. That should be all. Yes, because we've teared down, so this our VM is not working anymore. I'll have to close this, and our resource group and everything inside is being deleted. All right, that will be all, and thank you. You're welcome.